This is Gus Summers, and you're watching In-Show Celebrities. This is the time I take every Monday to talk about some of my favorite films and actors. This week, we have another of Hollywood's grand icons. This fine actor is known throughout the world of not only being an action star, but a writer, a producer, a director. You name it, he has done it. Of course, I'm talking about the legendary Mr. Sylvester Stallone. Right out of the gate, with his first feature film, he earned a Best Film Oscar. And from there, his career went in so many different directions, and then he hit on the very thing that made him not only a major movie star, but a superstar. Of course, I'm talking about the action genre. But before we talk about all that, going to be talking about one of my first films that I ever saw in the theater by myself that just wowed me. A fantastic story, fantastic character, and of course, it's the movie that earned him that Best Movie Oscar. The film, of course, is Rocky. He plays Rocky Balboa, basically a down-and-out fighter. He is also the muscle for a local loan shark, and he's always been in search for that golden ring, that break. But life and situations just prevent him from achieving his goals. He has this friend, played by, of course, wonderful Burt Young. He plays Paulie. He's a meat cutter, works at a meat plant, always has, meat ready for Rocky so he can eat, make sure he takes care of him, kind of like a big brother. And of course, he has a younger sister, very shy, very timid, who we know Rocky ends up, falling in love with. Of course, that is Adrian, Miss Tina Shire. She does such a wonderful job of playing this character that it fed into the story of this, this gentle giant needing, comfort and closeness. But as we know this, as the story progresses, there is the world champion, the heavyweight champion of the world, Mr. Apollo Creed, played great by Carl Weathers. They're in Philadelphia, things happen, and they want to put on an exhibition fight. So the thought was, let's get a local fighter and, give him an opportunity. Well, as we know, they pick Rocky, and as everyone's following the story, you see Apollo Creed just being laid back, sure, I'll be there for this meeting, send them flowers, send them, just caught up with the celebrity. And you see Rocky Balboa, training, wanting to do well because this could be his shot. The film, anyone who sees it knows that it's not just a boxing film. It was a film about life, about personhood, about, having an opportunity when it falls into your lap to achieve and do more and beyond your best. And it's not this thought of, well, all right, I did my best, yeah, he won. It wasn't a typical movie because he, as the movie progresses, for those of you who haven't seen it, I don't want to say too much, but it is about winning within self, of giving ourselves dignity, self-respect, to enable us to do more and give more to others. As we know, they set up the fight and they fight, but I don't want to give the ending away for those that haven't seen it. But there is this one great scene I love. It's right before the fight. He's out and about and he comes back home. Adrian's asleep and he's sitting on his bed. And it's a pivotal moment. It's fantastic. And I love it because Rocky sits down and, they're chit-chatting back and forth. She says, where'd you go? I went for a walk, blah, blah, blah. And then he tells her, he goes, I can't win. I can't do it. I can't beat this guy. Which was fantastic because the entire time you knew that he was thinking, I can beat him. I can fight this guy. Which is fantastic because here he is, a guy that's been training hard, got into the best shape that he can get into, fighting a professional athlete. This is what I do. This is my living. And Stallone, Rocky saying, I can't beat him, but if I can go 15 rounds, if I can just go the 15 rounds, no one's ever gone. I love how he says, he goes, no one's ever gone the full length with Creed. It's just like, wow. To him, his victory wasn't defeating Apollo Creed. It was to do something that no one has done before. To him, that's a victory, which I think, that is what the story's about. I remember being a kid and watching it and not grasping, a lot of the adult themes in it, but still capturing the concept of it. And then as I watched it when I was older, and I was thinking, I understand, I know what that means now that I'm older. And even now, I watch it, you still see those wonderful scenes. I go, that's a great scene. It talks about personal triumph, personal victory. Fantastic. But I can say one thing: when I was a kid, what I did understand was, get up, don't stay down, get up. I knew enough. But fantastic movie, of course. Don't even have to say that. Well, next up is a movie that kind of followed Rocky. Going completely out of time, moving all the way further back in history, is the film F.I.S.T. He plays Johnny, a local laborer who, after helping a friend, protesting a little bit, he ends up getting fired. But then he's approached by a man who's going around the country organizing unions, Moynihan, if I remember his name. But his name is Grand Actor. If you see him, you recognize him from everywhere. His name's Richard Hurd. And he approaches Sylvester Stallone saying, I like the leadership that you showed. Come work for me. You and your friend. We'll give you a car. Travel around, and develop union. Get unions organized. So he accepts the job. And you see, Johnny going around talking to people. Some people don't want anything to do with him. Other people start to listen. The union starts to grow, and what ends up happening is, as it's growing, you have, of course, different influences that come into effect. One of them is part of the union. His last name's Graham, if I remember correctly. Of course, portrayed wonderfully by Peter Boyle. They end up having conflict with each other because Peter wants to run the union as we all think the union will be run, backdoor deals and what have you. And Sylvester Stallone's character is trying to, maintain to his principles and so on and so forth. Well, again, as the movie progresses, different characters come in, and you find yourself, Sylvester Stallone finds himself needing to make certain deals for the good sake of the union. And one of them is that he meets this other local gangster whose help he ends up needing. His name's Doyle, another grand actor. Kevin Conway. He always plays these tough, either Irish, IRA characters, or union mobsters, because he has this gruff look to him and this tough demeanor. But he's generally always the gruff guy with the good heart. He's the one that after you befriend him, he does everything for you and tries to help you. Well, Johnny goes to him because they were trying to get a union contract in a particular company, and they're resistant. They even try to bribe Sylvester Stallone. He said no, and then they sent out security, strike breakers to hurt the union guys. So he gets help from Kevin Conway, and they start doing their things, stopping their trucks, destroying their shipments and what have you. So they end up getting a contract. So things are going, moving progressively forward. And then some 15, 20 years later, when he's now the president of the union, he's starting, he gets investigated by a Senate committee. Another senator, another grand actor of Hollywood, Mr. Rod Steiger. And, he starts investigating him and says, I know you're doing deals, wheeling and dealing, and I'm gonna nail you, I'm gonna get you. And so, the latter part of the film is when he's older, and you see Rod Steiger start talking to his friends, some of his old friends, the ones that you think that would never say anything bad about him, and other union organizers, and mobsters. And so now, Johnny is finding himself, in the midst of dealing with all these different issues because they suspect him of doing wheeling and dealing. So anyways, I mean, you got to watch the film. It was immediately after Rocky. It didn't do financially, it wasn't a big blockbuster, but it fit well with his character and his acting and the storytelling. One thing about Stallone is that when he writes and he's a part of something, they have the stories. When a film is done well, has the story behind it. It's a great story. Anyways, you got to watch it. F.I.S.T. And it stands for Federation of Interstate Truckers. F.I.S.T. So, it's a period piece. It starts from like the 30s to the 50s. Anyways, great film. One more, because many of these, I saw in theaters. And this one, I remember when I saw it, I was like, wow, what a great film. It had been sitting on the shelf, in the process of being made for about 10 years since the book was originally written. And then, all sorts of actors came into, were cast and then replaced and then cast again, so on and so forth. Finally got into the hands of Sylvester Stallone, and he made it. And this is basically the film that, in my opinion, really launched off the genre of action in the modern sense in the 80s. Of course, I'm talking about First Blood. He plays John Rambo. He's a Vietnam veteran who is just, lost. From life. He's dealing with the effects of Vietnam. In the beginning, he goes to go see a friend, and he's informed that his friend, who was like this big, I'm trying to remember his nickname, but big tank of a guy, real big. His mother tells him because he died, and he says, "Of what?" He says that Agent Orange, the cancer ate him up to nothing. And I remember the line. She says, "Even I could lift him off the sheets." So I was like, wow. Anyone who, and everyone should know about Vietnam and Agent Orange and what effects it not only had in the environment but on people, but of course American soldiers. So he's upset about that, and he's just walking. He's just minding his own business, and he's walking through this town, and the local sheriff sees him. And of course, I don't think you could have picked another actor who could have fit the role better than Mr. Brian Dennehy. He plays Sheriff Teasel. He's a big burly guy and just, typical Americana, mountain kind of guy. He sees Sylvester Stallone, thinks he's a vagrant, picks him up, drives him out of town. He says, just get out, And Sylvester Stallone said, well, I like something to eat. He goes, well, there's a town 20 miles, go eat there. And as you watch the film, you have to catch the nuances because you wonder why he stops. Brian Dennehy stops, lets him out, turns around, Sylvester Stallone just looks, and then he turns back around and starts walking to the town. Brian Dennehy sees him, stops him, arrests him, and takes him to jail. But you wonder, this is what's wonderful. This is a great scene because nothing is said, and it's left to you to interpret what he's thinking. Because, he just found out his good friend is dead. He's thinking about, what he's thinking about. He's thinking about his death of his friend. You're thinking about the sacrifices that I made in Vietnam, the difficulties I've had coming back, difficulties I'm having adjusting. And here it is. All I wanted to do was sit down and eat. I wasn't doing anything. I just wanted to eat something and I would have been on my way. But here's a sheriff that pushed, and I'm done. All that with no dialogue, within, not even 2 minutes, you get all that because, that's what he's thinking. Brian Dennehy takes him to jail. He's in jail. And as they're trying to shave him, do all these things, he's having flashbacks, and he freaks out, and, he beats up everybody, and he gets, he escapes to the local mountains. And so, Brian Dennehy tries to follow him, and it takes his men, And then, we learned that, John Rambo, booby traps everything and is, corners everyone, hurts everyone, but doesn't kill anyone. And, he flees off. Then in a little while comes Richard Crenna, another fine actor. He plays Colonel Troutman. And Richard Crenna tells Brian Dennehy, you can't catch him. He's a former Green Beret. He's a master in booby traps. He's a master of all this. There's no way. He goes. I'm just surprised. What a great line. He goes, I'm surprised he left any of your men alive. Because that's how he's trained. He goes, you'll never catch him. And so, as we know, the story goes, they bring in the National Guard. They try to catch him, and so on and so forth. But what was fantastic about the film was it was, again, it gave depth and breadth and width to the idea of what happens to an individual after the war. The things that they go through. And again, he wasn't violent. He was pushed and pushed too far. And again, if you look at it on the other side, where someone who's not at least empathetic and realizing, hey, just let the guy eat. And if he had been Brian Dennehy's character would have been a little more empathetic. What do you need? You want to go eat? You served our country. You bet. Come on, let me take you to go eat. And I'll pay for it, and you can be on your way. I bet if, of course, if he had done that, the story would be over. But we know that's not the story, and we know that that rarely happens. But a fantastic movie. Again, it gave an insight in a wonderful way to issues of life and such. But of course, that was the movie that spawned Rambo 2, that spawned the Rambo 3, even the latest Rambo, and all the action films after that of all the fighting guys and everything. But again, fantastic movies. Again, Rocky, come on, its equivalent, Rocky 2, is just as great. But Rocky, fantastic film. Fist, again, it's one of those period pieces that reflect the times, and also what it is that it was loosely based on the life of Jimmy Hoffa. So a little insight into all that. And of course, First Blood, John Rambo, the beginning of an iconic action figure that still goes today. And that's what I got for you this week. Again, what can one say about Sylvester Stallone? Academy Award winner, action star, movie star, and still enduring star. Well, that's what I got for you today. Well, this has been Gus Summers, and you've been watching In-Show Celebrities. And this is the time I take every Monday to talk about my favorite films and actors. Of course, remember, don't forget, every Thursday from 1 to 2 at theinshow.com, I host The In-Show. That's where I bring on celebrities and all sorts of guests to talk about their favorite their projects and whatever it is that they want to talk about. Of course, look for us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Flickr, Instagram, all those great social media sites. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, Gus has left the building.